Hello there, and welcome to Mysteries of Earth. Today we begin with a question that cuts to the very core of our existence. What will truly remain of us? We like to think of our world as permanent. Towers of steel, cities of glass, bridges that span rivers, and monuments that seem eternal. They feel immovable, timeless, proof that humanity has carved its place into the planet itself. Yet, beneath that illusion of permanence lies a truth both humbling and unsettling. Everything we build is temporary. Imagine it. A great suspension bridge rising above the water, cables taut, roadways buzzing with life. Now close your eyes and let centuries pass in an instant. The paint peels, the steel corrodes, bolts snap, cables fray. At first, small sections collapse into the river below, and then the whole span gives way, vanishing into the current. Where once there was a marvel of engineering, now there is only water, flowing silently as if it had never been disturbed. Or picture a skyscraper. Its glass windows reflect the sun, shining like a beacon of progress. But without maintenance, storms shatter those windows one by one. Rain seeps in. Metal beams rust and crack. Entire floors crumble under their own weight. A building that once scraped the sky slowly sinks into the ground beneath it. Even monuments meant to defy time are not immune. Marble weathers, granite erodes, names carved into stone blur until they cannot be read. We patch, we repair, we restore, but remove the hand of human care, and the countdown begins. If humanity vanished tomorrow, nature would reclaim our world with astonishing speed. Within a year, weeds would rise through the cracks in sidewalks. Within a decade, vines would swallow entire buildings. In less than a century, forests would return to the edges of our cities. Deer, wolves, and birds would wander streets that once belonged to us. And in only a few thousand years, barely a heartbeat in Earth's history, most of what we built would crumble into dust. Think of our highways. Once carefully laid ribbons of asphalt, they would fracture under heat and cold. Roots would push through, prying them apart. Rivers would erode their foundations, leaving behind nothing but faint lines visible from above. Ghosts of roads leading nowhere. Think of our suburbs, neighborhoods, and parks. Houses would rot as wood succumbed to fungi and insects. Roofs would collapse. Gardens would return to wild meadows, alive with the sound of buzzing insects. Our carefully managed lawns would become indistinguishable from the wilderness surrounding them. And if we extend the clock further, hundreds of thousands, millions of years, the erasure becomes even more complete. Entire continents drift. Mountains rise and crumble. Glaciers carve valleys and then retreat. The surface of the earth itself shifts, dragging our remains down, burying them beneath new layers of rock. In time, even the grandest of our creations would vanish entirely from sight. This is the reality of deep time. For all our ambition, for all our technology, the things we make are fragile when measured against the patience of the earth. Nature does not destroy with anger or violence. It simply waits, and in that waiting, everything returns to silence. And yet, there is another side to this. For while our cities and monuments may vanish, traces of us will still remain, though not in the way we expect. What the archaeologists of tomorrow would find is not Rome, not New York, not Beijing, not the gleam of steel or the echo of voices. They would find a layer in the rock, a thin band of stone stretching across the entire globe. Within it, the fingerprints of our civilization, metals we mined and scattered, plastics that refuse to vanish even as they break down, isotopes forged in reactors and weapons, a chemical scar left behind in the soil and oceans. Just as a faint line of iridium marks the day the dinosaurs died, so too will there be a layer that marks us. It is a humbling thought that our greatest monuments may not be what defines us in the end. Instead, it may be this thin, stubborn trace, a shadow of chemistry locked into the earth, whispering that we were here. And so we are left with a question. When the layers of time bury us, and the surface of the earth writes over our story, what will actually remain? Not the towers we built, not the monuments, not the words carved into stone, but a memory etched in the language of geology, a message to whoever or whatever comes after us. Will they understand it? Will they recognize it as the trace of a civilization? Or will they mistake it for something natural, a quirk of volcanic activity, a shift in ancient oceans? Perhaps they will never know. Perhaps our story will not be read at all, but it will still be there, folded into the deep silence of the earth. And maybe, in that silence, there is a lesson. That permanence is an illusion. That every civilization, no matter how powerful, is fragile. That our true legacy is not what we build, but the changes we leave imprinted on the very chemistry of our world. So as we stand on our streets, beneath the towers and bridges and monuments, it is worth asking, when these have all fallen, when even their rubble is gone, what will remain of us? And will it be enough? Because this is only the beginning of the mystery. For if our own world can erase us so completely, then what of the worlds that came before? Could there have been others, long forgotten, their traces buried in the same silence that waits for us, the archaeology of tomorrow? Imagine the distant future. The world has shifted. Continents have drifted. Mountains have risen and crumbled. Seas have advanced and retreated. Entire landscapes have been erased, rewritten, and erased again. And buried deep within this restless earth, archaeologists of tomorrow are searching, not for towering ruins or shattered statues, but for something far stranger. They are not looking for skyscrapers rising defiantly into the clouds. They will not stumble upon gleaming cities preserved in amber or vast libraries of stone. Those visions belong to fantasy. What they will find is far less dramatic, and yet far more revealing. They will find a thin, stubborn layer of altered stone, a layer stretching across the planet like a quiet scar. To the untrained eye, it will look unremarkable, a thin band of discolored rock nestled between older layers. But inside, it will hold the entire story of us. Think about that for a moment. Everything we have ever built, everything we have ever imagined, reduced to a geological sliver. What will that layer contain? It will not be monuments. It will not be the words carved into our libraries or the soaring lines of our towers. It will be chemistry, plastics, for example, our most enduring signature, born of ancient oil, molded into infinite shapes, scattered across the globe, from the deepest trenches of the sea to the most remote mountain peaks. Plastics are already infiltrating the planet's sediments, being compacted into the very crust. Over time, they will not remain as bags or bottles. They will fragment, dissolve, and blend into the rocks themselves, leaving behind ghostly molecular patterns that no natural process could explain. To the archaeologists of tomorrow, these synthetic polymers will be like breadcrumbs, pointing unmistakably to a species that once lived here, shaping its world in unnatural ways. But plastic is only the beginning. Metals will join the record, metals pulled from the deep earth and smeared across the surface in quantities never seen before. Aluminum, copper, steel, alloys invented by human hands. When buried and compressed, these metals will oxidize, corrode, and change, but their concentrations in the rock will remain a puzzle for future minds. They will notice that, at one specific moment in deep time, Earth's chemistry shifted. The natural balance was disturbed, replaced by patterns that bear the mark of industry. And then there are the isotopes, the invisible scars of our energy age. The burning of coal and oil has already etched its fingerprint into the atmosphere and oceans. Nuclear testing, too, has left radioactive signatures that cannot simply fade away. These isotopic anomalies will become permanent fixtures in the rock record. To the archaeologists of tomorrow, they will serve as undeniable evidence. At some point, something intelligent lived here, something powerful enough to alter the planet's chemistry at a global scale. This is what our legacy will be, not the beauty of our monuments, but the chemistry of our waste. It's humbling, isn't it? To realize that the future will not remember us through our art, our music, or our stories, but through our plastics, our metals, and our isotopes. That our grandest cathedrals will crumble, while the microscopic traces of synthetic molecules endure. But here lies the haunting question. Will anyone even know what those traces mean? Imagine an alien intelligence, millions of years from now, arriving on a quiet Earth, long emptied of life. They crack open the stones and find our layer. Plastics, metals, isotopic scars. Would they recognize them as the fingerprints of a civilization, or would they dismiss them as peculiar quirks of geology, the result of some ancient, exotic volcano or chemical storm? How many times, even now, have we brushed past strange anomalies in the rock record, chemical signals we cannot explain, and simply labeled them natural? What if those were not natural at all? What if they were the echoes of someone who came before us? That is the unsettling possibility. The archaeology of tomorrow may already be staring us in the face, and we might not even see it. Think about how thin our own chapter will be. Geologists measure Earth's history not in years, not in centuries, but in layers. A single centimeter of rock may represent thousands, even tens of thousands of years. All of human history, the empires, the wars, the revolutions, the dreams, compressed into a sliver barely visible to the naked eye. This is what time does. It collapses everything into silence. So perhaps the archaeologists of tomorrow will not find us at all. Perhaps our story will vanish beneath shifting plates and molten stone. Perhaps the only clue will be a subtle chemical echo, so faint it could be mistaken for noise. And yet, isn't that enough? Because even if our monuments crumble, even if our voices fade, we will still be part of the Earth's memory. We will still leave behind a mark, however fragile, that says, we were here. For a moment in the deep history of this world, there was something different, something alive, aware, restless, something that changed the chemistry of the planet itself. The archaeology of tomorrow is not about discovering ruins. It is about discovering patterns. It is about lisses, teening to the rocks and asking questions they do not easily answer. It is about recognizing that civilizations are not remembered in stone or steel, but in the quiet language of chemistry. And so, we are left with an uncomfortable realization. Our legacy will not be what we want it to be. It will not be the stories we tell ourselves or the monuments we raise. it will be a thin, stubborn layer of altered rock. And whether that layer will ever be recognized as the signature of a civilization remains uncertain. But perhaps uncertainty is the point. Because if we can imagine future archaeologists puzzling over our chemical shadows, then we must also imagine the possibility that we ourselves are standing on someone else's. How many strange bands in the rock have we dismissed as natural? How many chemical shifts, unexplained isotopes, odd mineral concentrations have we brushed aside, not realizing that they might be the legacies of civilizations long gone? If the archaeology of tomorrow is about reading patterns, then perhaps we are already surrounded by whispers of forgotten worlds. And if that is true, then our story is not only about what we will leave behind. It is also about what we might already be standing on. Layers of memory written into the earth, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. So when the archaeologists of tomorrow look back at us, what will they see? A mystery? A mistake? A fleeting experiment in intelligence erased almost as soon as it began? Or will they see a connection, one layer among many, a single voice in a vast chorus of civilizations, each one rising, leaving its mark and fading into silence? This is the question that lingers. Our story is not only fragile, it is incomplete, and perhaps the only way to truly understand it is to turn our gaze to what comes next. In the next chapter, we'll step deeper into that haunting possibility that we may not have been the first, and that the echoes of others may already be buried beneath our feet. Who will read our story? The stones will hold our secrets. The oceans will cradle our fragments. The winds will scatter what remains. But the question is not only what we leave behind, it is who, if anyone, will ever read it. When we imagine the distant future, we often think in familiar shapes. Perhaps future humans will walk the earth, deciphering our traces. But the march of time is cruel, and it rarely grants continuity. The human form, as we know it, is only a chapter, not the entire book. So who will read our story? Let's begin with the most obvious possibility. Humans, our descendants. If civilization collapses tomorrow, and some line of humanity survives, perhaps tens of thousands of years later, they will rise again. They might dig into the earth and discover our chemical scars, our plastics woven into stone, our isotopes frozen in time. They might see themselves reflected in us, a forgotten ancestor who burned bright and fell silent. For them, our story could serve as both a warning and a mirror. But even this vision is fragile. Evolution never stops. Given enough time, the humans of today may no longer exist in any recognizable form. If millions of years pass, our descendants will not look like us. Their bones may be longer, their faces alien to our eyes. They may be adapted to climates we could not endure, or even to environments beyond Earth itself. Perhaps the humans of tomorrow will not even live on this planet. Perhaps they will be scattered across the stars, visiting Earth not as home, but as myth. If that is the case, will they care to read our story? Or will they, like we so often do, look upon ruins with curiosity, but little connection, unable to feel the heartbeat of those who built them? And what if humanity does not survive at all? This brings us to the second possibility, a new species, born of Earth, but not of us. Life has always moved in cycles. When one form disappears, another emerges, shaped by pressures we cannot predict. Perhaps one day, long after humans vanish, Evolution will sculpt something entirely new, a species with its own intelligence, its own hunger for knowledge. They may not have eyes like ours. They may not speak in voices. They may crawl, swim, or fly. But if they rise to awareness, they too may wonder about those who came before. They may scratch at the rocks, sift the sands, and notice an odd layer, a thin line of strange chemistry. They may puzzle over it, as we puzzle over the mysteries of vanished ages. Will they imagine us correctly? Or will they invent myths to explain what they find? Perhaps they will see the traces of plastic and envision a civilization of creatures made entirely of synthetic flesh. Perhaps they will find isotopes and imagine a world ruled by fire. To them, our legacy may be a riddle with no solution. And then, there is a possibility even more distant, one that takes us beyond the borders of this world. What if the readers of our story are not from Earth at all? Imagine alien beings arriving long after our sun has shifted, long after the continents have transformed beyond recognition. They land on a quiet, half-forgotten planet. They drill into its crust, not to find us, but to understand the geology of a world circling an aging star. And yet, they find it. The thin layer, the plastics, the metals, the isotopes. What would they think? Would they recognize intelligence in the traces we left? Would they see in our layer the same patterns they once saw on their own world? Or would they view us as a failed experiment, a civilization that burned through its chance and left behind nothing but waste? Perhaps they would grieve for us, imagining lives cut short. Or perhaps they would feel nothing at all, for in their eyes, we would be too brief, too small, to matter. To them, we might be no more significant than the fossils of trilobites are to us. Interesting, yes, but not the heart of the story. There is another, darker possibility. What if no one reads our story at all? Time is long, and the universe is vast. It may be that Earth remains silent after us, its stones holding secrets with no one to hear them. Our traces might endure, but unread, they are meaningless. A book without a reader, a message without a listener. Is that the fate of every civilization? To carve its story into the cosmos and then vanish, leaving behind letters that no one ever learns to read? Or is it possible that even if no one else reads it, Earth itself remembers? That the winds, the oceans, the mountains carry within them echoes of what we were. Not as words, not as history, but as presence, as if simply existing leaves a resonance that never truly disappears. And so the question is not only who will read our story, but whether a story must be read at all to matter. If humans survive, they will inherit our mistakes and our wonders. If new species arise, they will misinterpret us, weaving myths from fragments. If beings from beyond Earth come, they will puzzle over us, perhaps dismiss us, perhaps understand us. And if no one comes at all, if no reader ever appears, then perhaps it is not about them. Perhaps it is about us, here and now, recognizing that even the smallest layer we leave behind is part of the vast, mysterious fabric of time. But here lies the haunting twist. What if we are already living in someone else's story? What if we are the readers, standing unknowingly on the layered legacies of civilizations erased before memory began? What if the anomalies in the rocks, the unexplained patterns in the deep earth, are not simply accidents of nature, but the faded whispers of those who came before? If that is true, then the archaeology of tomorrow is not only about what comes after us, it is also about what came before. And so the question lingers in the shadows. Are we the authors of the first story on this planet, or only the latest chapter in a book far older than we dare to imagine? In the next chapter, we will follow that whisper further. If others came before us, what traces could they have left, and have we already overlooked them? A mirror in deep time. When we look back into Earth's history, we become archaeologists of the unimaginable. We peel back layers of rock as though they are pages of a book, each one written in a language of stone, ash, and fossilized bone. Yet in doing so, we may be holding a mirror to ourselves. The way we read the past may be the same way that some distant intelligence, whether human or not, will one day read us. So let us pause and imagine. When we search for meaning in deep time, what are we really finding? Consider the fossil record. To us, it is a silent archive, preserving moments that would otherwise vanish. A trilobite pressed into stone, a fern leaf forever imprinted in shale, the tooth of a dinosaur, sharp even after millions of years. They are fragments, scattered like broken sentences from stories we can never fully reconstruct. And yet, we build entire worlds from these fragments. From a few scattered bones, we reimagine creatures taller than trees. From a ripple in ancient mudstone, we reconstruct the motion of tides on a vanished shore. Fossils are not just remnants, they are clues, echoes of lives that once pulsed with warmth and hunger, now reduced to whispers in rock. But fossils alone are not enough. Sometimes it is not what is preserved, but what is absent, that tells us the greatest truths. Take the thin layer of iridium found across the globe, a trace of catastrophe. To the untrained eye, it is nothing, a mere chemical oddity. But to us, it is evidence of the asteroid impact that ended the reign of the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. That single layer is the signature of destruction, the punctuation mark on one of Earth's greatest chapters. It is a haunting thought, the story of an entire world reduced to a centimeter of dust. And then there are the extinction events, sudden silences in the fossil record where diversity collapses and new RMS take over. The Permian extinction, when most life perished. The Cretaceous event, when giants fell. Each of these moments tells us not only of endings, but of beginnings, of how life reshapes itself in the face of devastation. Now imagine how we, too, might be read. Perhaps, millions of years from now, a new intelligence will study Earth's rocks. They will find a thin layer enriched with plastics, metals, and isotopes, a chemical anomaly stretching around the globe. To them, it will look like our iridium layer, a marker of sudden change. They will puzzle over it, perhaps recognizing it as the trace of a civilization, or perhaps they will see it simply as a geologic accident. We, who read the past through fossils and chemical scars, will be mirrored by those who come after us. The same way we interpret trilobites and dinosaurs, they will interpret us. The same way we imagine the asteroid that struck the Yucatan, they may imagine the forces that ended or transformed our species. There is a strange humility in this, for when we study the past, we are not only learning about trilobites and dinosaurs, we are rehearsing. We are practicing the very methods that will one day be used on us. Our fascination with fossils and layers is not only about them. It is also about us, sensing our own impermanence, recognizing that one day we too will be reduced to fragments in the stone. And here lies the deeper reflection. If our entire civilization could one day be reduced to a thin chemical line, then how much of the past have we already misunderstood? Think of it. We look at fossils and see patterns of extinction and survival. But are we missing stories? Were there moments in deep time when intelligence bloomed briefly, only to be erased, leaving behind no more evidence than the trilobite or the fern? Could an ancient spark of awareness have flared and then vanished, leaving nothing but subtle chemical traces that we dismiss as natural anomalies? If so, then we are not only mirrors of the past, we are shadows within it. Every fossil we uncover, every anomaly we explain, may be a distorted echo of something greater. We see the outlines, but not the detail, the skeleton, but not the flesh, the silence, but not the voice. And this is exactly how the future will see us. They will not know our languages, our dreams, our art. They will see only chemistry, only geology. To them, our monuments will mean nothing. Our skyscrapers will crumble before they are ever found. Our greatest libraries will decay before they are ever read. In the end, we are not the builders of eternal legacies. We are the writers of fragile notes, scrawled on paper that time will almost certainly erase. But perhaps this is what connects us to the deep time we study. We and the trilobites, we and the dinosaurs, we and the vanished forests of the Carboniferous. None of us endure as we were. We are all reduced, all compressed, all simplified into traces. And yet, those traces are enough to tell a story, enough to ignite imagination, enough to make us wonder. Maybe that is the true mirror, not in the fossils themselves, but in our curiosity. We look at the past because we sense the future will look at us. We study what is gone because we know we, too, will be studied when we are gone. The irony is profound. We think we are the scientists, the archaeologists, the historians of Earth. But in truth, we are rehearsing for our own disappearance. Every fossil we examine is not only a window into the past, it is also a rehearsal for the way we ourselves will be remembered. So the question lingers. If our story will one day be read the way we read the past, are we comfortable with what we are leaving behind? Will the future see us as a species of ingenuity or a species of destruction? Will they interpret our chemical layer as the sign of brilliance or of recklessness? Will they imagine us as creators or as a cautionary tale? The mirror does not lie. As we peer into the deep past, we see our own reflection, stretched across billions of years, fragile, incomplete, and haunting. And perhaps the most unsettling truth of all is this: what we see when we look backward may already be what others will one day see when they look forward. In the next chapter, we move from reflection to suspicion. If other civilizations had arisen before us, long vanished into dust, what traces could they have left? And have we already overlooked them? The silence of the stars. When we look up at the night sky, it appears endless. Stars scattered like diamonds across a black ocean, galaxies spiraling in slow, silent majesty. We are told there are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, and beyond that, billions of galaxies. Each one, a collection of suns. Each sun, a potential cradle for planets. And on some of those planets, the conditions may have been right. Oceans, atmospheres, warmth, chemistry, the ingredients for life. From this perspective, it seems almost inevitable. If life emerged here on Earth, on a small rocky planet orbiting an ordinary star, why not elsewhere? Why not many times? Why not everywhere? And yet, as we listen for voices, as we scan the skies for signals, we are met with silence, an unsettling quiet, so complete it feels deliberate. This is the riddle we call the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast and the possibilities so many, then where is everyone? Why don't we see the signs of ancient civilizations among the stars? Why haven't they visited or announced themselves or left behind monuments that stretch across the heavens? The question becomes even stranger when we think in terms of deep time. Our own civilization has existed for only a blink of an eye. A few thousand years of cities, a few hundred years of technology, a few decades of space exploration. The universe, on the other hand, is nearly 14 billion years old. That means countless worlds have had more than enough time, not just to produce life, but to let that life flourish, build, expand, and perhaps even colonize the stars. So why do we see nothing? Perhaps it is because we are looking for the wrong thing. When we imagine other civilizations, we often imagine reflections of ourselves, cities, radio signals, spacecraft. But time is merciless. Just as Earth erases the traces of its own past, the universe erases the marks of civilizations on other worlds. Mountains rise and fall. Atmospheres shift. Planets freeze or burn or shatter. Even stars themselves die, collapsing into silence. If there were civilizations out there, millions, billions, even trillions of years ago, then their traces may already be gone. Their monuments dust, their signals lost in the cosmic background, their works buried beneath new layers of planetary history. Consider our own Earth. If we were to vanish tomorrow, how long would our voice last? Radio signals fade into noise within a few dozen light years. Satellites in orbit decay, crashing back into the atmosphere. Spacecraft on distant planets are left to erode under alien winds. In a few thousand years, most of our presence would be erased. In a few million, nothing would remain but chemical echoes in the rocks. In a billion, even those echoes might vanish. Why would it be any different for someone else? So maybe the universe is not silent. Maybe it is simply too old, too vast, too patient. Civilizations may have risen and fallen countless times, scattered across billions of worlds, each one a brief flare of awareness, a firework bursting into brilliance, reshaping its planet, perhaps even reaching to the stars, before fading, collapsing, or disappearing altogether. In this view, the silence is not absence. It is memory. It is the echo of civilizations long gone, erased by the same deep time that waits for us. And yet, isn't that even more haunting? Imagine the first beings who rose on a distant world a billion years ago. They may have built wonders beyond our comprehension. They may have studied their universe, written their stories, fought their wars, dreamed their dreams. They may have looked at their skies and asked the same question we ask now. Are we alone? And perhaps like us, they searched for others, straining against the silence, hoping for a voice. But by the time we appeared, their time was already over. Their world may still circle its sun, but the civilization that once flourished there is gone. Their traces erased, their voice stilled. This is what deep time does. It does not just erase cities and monuments. It erases entire possibilities. It leaves only silence. The silence of the stars is not empty. It is crowded with ghosts. And maybe this is the answer to the paradox. Not that civilizations never existed, but that they always end. They are too brief, too fragile, too temporary to overlap with one another. The galaxy may have been full of minds once, but now we are separated not by space, but by time. When we look at the stars, we may be looking not at neighbors, but at tombstones. The thought is unsettling. It transforms the night sky from a canvas of possibility into a cemetery of forgotten civilizations. Every planet we imagine may not be waiting for life to appear, but mourning the life that already came and went. And still, there is another possibility. What if some civilizations did endure? What if, against all odds, some found ways to last not for millennia, but for millions of years? Would they still be visible to us? Perhaps not. For what if endurance requires silence? What if the civilizations that survive are not the ones that shout, but the ones that learn to live quietly, to blend with their worlds, to leave no scars behind? If so, then perhaps the silence of the stars is not the silence of absence, but the silence of wisdom. Civilizations might be everywhere, hidden in the very worlds we overlook, folded into the fabric of their planets in ways we cannot yet perceive. But whether the silence comes from erasure or endurance, the result for us is the same. We see nothing. We hear nothing. We are left to wonder. And that wonder reveals something profound. The silence of the stars is a mirror of the silence of the earth. Just as our planet hides its past beneath layers of stone, so too does the cosmos hide its history behind the veil of time. We are surrounded by mysteries, not because the universe is empty, but because it is too old, too vast, and too patient for us to grasp in a single fleeting lifetime. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the silence is this: civilizations are not permanent, not ours, not theirs, not anyone's. We are all temporary. We are all sparks in the dark, burning brightly for a moment, before being folded into the silence once more. And yet, even silence has meaning. It humbles us. It forces us to see ourselves, not as the inevitable rulers of time, but as participants in a cycle that stretches across the stars. To live, to build, to vanish, to be remembered only as a whisper in the rocks, or a fading echo in the cosmic background. That is the true voice of the universe. The silence is not empty. It is full of everything that has ever been. In the next chapter, we will turn back toward Earth itself and ask an even more unsettling question. If other civilizations once walked this planet long before us, what traces could they have left? And have we already overlooked them? Ghosts in the rocks, stone does not lie. It is the oldest witness we have. Layer by layer, it records the passing of oceans, the violence of volcanoes, the impact of asteroids, the slow drifting of continents. Every grain of sediment, every seam of coal, every fossilized shell. It is all part of Earth's memory. But memory, even in stone, has limits. It fades, it fractures, it buries itself deeper beneath new histories. And here lies a chilling question. If another civilization once walked this earth, long before us, would we even know? We imagine ruins, vast and crumbling, lost cities waiting to be uncovered beneath jungles or deserts. But ruins are fragile. They weather, they crumble, they vanish. Even the strongest monuments of human hands, the pyramids, the Great Wall, skyscrapers, are temporary scratches on the surface. Give them 100,000 years, and they dissolve into dust. Give them 1,000,000, and they are nothing. So if an advanced civilization had risen tens of millions of years ago, before the last ice ages, before the great mammals, even before the dinosaurs, what would remain? Not towers, not temples, not machines, only ghosts in the rocks. What kind of ghosts? Chemical whispers, subtle anomalies in sediment layers, the fingerprints of industry, frozen in time, plastics turned into stone-like nodules, synthetic metals resistant to decay, isotopes that do not occur naturally, trapped in clays and shales. These would be the true ruins of a civilization, not structures, but chemistry. And here's the unsettling part. Earth's rocks are already full of anomalies. We find sudden spikes of iridium at the boundary where the dinosaurs vanished, a cosmic fingerprint of the asteroid that struck 66 million years ago. We find radioactive isotopes left behind by natural uranium reactions that burned underground 2 billion years ago in what is now Gabon, Africa. Then we find thin layers of soot marking ancient firestorms that swept across continents. If cataclysms and natural events can leave such scars, then so could civilizations. But the signatures would be subtle. A sudden change in carbon isotopes, suggesting vast burning of fossil fuels. Heavy metals distributed in unusual concentrations, hinting at industry. Even artificial molecules, strange polymers with no place in nature, waiting quietly in deep sediments. And here is the most haunting possibility. What if we have already seen such signs, but dismissed them as quirks of geology? After all, when paleontologists study the rocks, they search for fossils of animals and plants. When geologists map strata, they seek to reconstruct climate, tectonics, or asteroid impacts. Few ask whether a civilization might have left its fingerprints millions of years ago. Perhaps the evidence is already in our museums and archives, catalogued as unusual samples, unexplained chemical shifts, curious layers of sediment, overlooked because no one thought to ask the forbidden question. What if someone was here before us? Consider this. If our own civilization were to collapse tomorrow, what would survive in 10 million years? Not our books, not our digital records, not our roads or bridges, but perhaps the spike of carbon from our burning of fossil fuels, recorded in stone. Perhaps a strange layer filled with microplastics, now fused into rock. Perhaps traces of radioactive isotopes, the faint echo of our nuclear age. That is what would remain. Not stories, not names, only chemistry. Now imagine scientists 10 million years from now uncovering our ghost layer. What story would they tell? Would they see it for what it was, evidence of a civilization? Or would they mistake it for a peculiar volcanic event, or a climate anomaly, or a natural spike in radiation? This is not just speculate, Ion. It is a mirror. Because we may already be those scientists, staring at ancient anomalies and explaining them away. There are curious episodes in Earth's past. Periods where carbon levels rose sharply, where sudden extinctions swept across life, where metals appear in strange concentrations. Most explanations invoke natural causes, volcanoes, asteroid impacts, climate shifts. And perhaps those explanations are right. But what if, in some cases, they are not the whole story? What if some of those events are not natural at all, but the fingerprints of forgotten civilizations? Civilizations erased so thoroughly that their only trace is a whisper in the rocks. The thought unsettles us because it challenges our uniqueness. We like to believe we are the first, the pinnacle, the only. But Earth is ancient, so ancient that human history barely registers as a moment. In billions of years, is it truly impossible that others rose before us, that others fell before us? And if they did, then our monuments mean nothing. Our history means nothing, because their monuments and their history are gone, and ours will follow. What endures is not architecture, but chemistry. Not memory, but residue. Think of the unsettling irony. The proudest achievements of any civilization, their art, their culture, their philosophy, vanish into dust. What endures are their pollutants, their scars, their mistakes. In this sense, we are already writing our own ghost story into the rocks. Plastics, metals, isotopes, our unintended monuments. Long after our buildings collapse, these will remain, not as a tribute, but as a warning. And perhaps that is the final haunting thought. The rocks do not remember civilizations for their triumphs. They remember them for their collapses, for the moment they faltered, burned too much, poisoned too deeply, and left their stain in the earth. Maybe that is the only kind of legacy any civilization can leave, the mark of its end. So when we look at the rocks, perhaps we are not just seeing the ghosts of volcanoes and asteroids. Perhaps we are seeing the ghosts of others who came before. Civilizations erased, not just from memory, but from imagination. Their only testimony is a faint layer of chemistry, waiting for us to recognize it. The question is, will we walk past those clues forever, believing we are alone, while the earth quietly whispers its older secrets to those who are willing to listen? In the next chapter, we will turn from Earth's ancient stones to something even more elusive, the question of legacy itself. If everything fades, if all becomes silence, then what does it truly mean to endure? Beyond human imagination, we humans are trapped within the limits of our own imagination. When we think of civilization, we picture cities of stone, towers of steel, glowing lights, roaring machines. We assume technology must leave monuments, roads, satellites, skyscrapers. But this assumption may be our greatest blind spot. What if a civilization existed on Earth, or even beyond Earth, that did not resemble us at all? What if their technology, their way of life, left behind no ruins we would ever recognize? Think about how narrow our perspective really is. Our entire sense of civilization is shaped by the brief flicker of human history. Barely a few thousand years of cities, only a century of true industry. Yet we project this onto billions of years and countless possibilities. We expect that if a civilization had existed, it would look like us. But must it? Imagine a society that mastered biological technology instead of mechanical. Instead of steel, they grew structures. Instead of engines, they harnessed chemical processes. Their cities could have been vast forests, deliberately cultivated to serve as shelter, food, and energy sources. Their roads might have been fungal networks, spreading silently beneath the soil. To us, those structures would blend into the natural world, leaving no ruins, no monuments, only ecosystems that collapsed back into nature when their creators were gone. If such a civilization existed, could we even tell the difference between their work and untouched wilderness? Would their legacy appear to us as just another fossilized reef, another layer of sediment, another forest, long turned to coal? Now imagine a civilization of pure information, a species whose technology was based not on matter, but on patterns, on sound, light, electromagnetic fields, or even thought itself. Their greatest constructions would not be pyramids or skies, crapers, but vast arrangements of energy, invisible to us, vanishing when their society faded. No ruins, no fossils, no debris, just silence. Could such a society have lived and vanished, unnoticed, in Earth's deep past? This possibility forces us to question the very definition of evidence. What do we count as proof of civilization? Monuments, artifacts, metals? Or could civilization also be written in subtler ways, shifts in ecosystems, changes in atmospheric chemistry, disruptions in evolutionary pathways. It's unsettling to realize how much we might miss because we expect the wrong signs. Imagine future archaeologists uncovering Earth after us. Suppose they do not understand metals, plastics, or isotopes. To them, our cities might be invisible, our technology meaningless. They might conclude no civilization ever existed here. We could already be making the same mistake with the past. Perhaps we look at ancient anomalies, sudden bursts of diversity, strange extinctions, odd isotopic signatures, and dismiss them as random quirks. But what if they are not quirks? What if they are the echoes of intelligence so different from ours that we cannot even recognize it? Think of the oceans. For billions of years, microbial communities ruled Earth. They built layered stromatolites, engineered chemical cycles, transformed the atmosphere itself. They were, in their way, ecological engineers. Yet if we looked without knowing, we might see nothing but rocks and slime. Their influence was subtle, yet it reshaped the entire planet. If microbes could transform Earth without leaving monuments, why couldn't a more advanced civilization do the same? Now push this further. What if some civilizations choose not to leave traces? What if invisibility is their greatest technology? Imagine a society that learned to live in balance so perfectly that it erased its own footprints. No scars, no waste, no debris. To us, they would be ghosts. To themselves, perhaps they had found the ultimate harmony, to thrive without altering the record of the planet. Wouldn't that be the most advanced form of civilization? One that does not need monuments at all? This idea unsettles us because it contradicts our instincts. We want permanence. We want stone and steel to declare, we were here. Yet permanence is an illusion. Even our own world reveals this. Skyscrapers crumble, satellites fall, roads crack, forests return. In the span of deep time, everything built by humans dissolves. If permanence cannot be achieved, perhaps true advancement lies in transcendence, in creating systems so elegant, so natural, that they vanish without trace when they end. Could this be why we see no evidence of other civilizations, on Earth or in the stars? Not because they never existed, but because they left no scars we would understand. And so we return to a haunting possibility. Maybe we are not alone in history, but blind. Perhaps civilizations have risen and fallen not once, but many times, each one different, each one beyond our recognition, each one swallowed by time, until only silence remains. This silence is not proof of absence. It is proof of our ignorance. Let's stretch our imagination even further. Suppose another kind of intelligence once existed, not human, not animal as we know it, perhaps shaped by evolutionary pathways long extinguished. Suppose it lived in symbiosis with geology, embedding its knowledge into crystal lattices, encoding information into minerals. To us, these would look like natural stones. But to them, they were archives, libraries, living memory. How would we ever know? Or consider life that evolved not in the open air, but deep underground, in networks of caves and magma chambers. Their technology might be geological manipulation, controlling heat, pressure, chemistry. To us, the rocks would look ordinary. To them, they were infrastructure. We would never see their cities, because their cities are the planet I, self. And if such beings ever existed, if they shaped Earth in ways invisible to us, wouldn't that mean we are already walking in their ruins without ever realizing it? This is the true terror of imagination. Not that we are alone, but that we may be surrounded by legacies we cannot recognize. That civilization, in its infinite forms, might be all around us, in ways we are too narrow-minded to see. And perhaps that is the greatest warning for our own future. If others existed and vanished without trace, then we may do the same. Not because our monuments will crumble, that much is certain, but because the universe itself is indifferent to permanence. What matters in the long run is not stone or steel, but whether our story can even be recognized once we are gone. So the question becomes, how do you make a legacy that endures beyond imagination? Is it even possible? Or is civilization always doomed to become invisible, swallowed by time, leaving behind only silence, whispers, and ghosts? In the next chapter, we will follow this silence into the deepest layers of Earth itself. Because if civilizations leave only chemistry and shadows, then the final archive of every story, ours included, must lie in the rocks. And there, perhaps, the Earth still hides secrets older than we dare to imagine. Erasure and renewal. The Earth remembers, but it also forgets. Every layer of stone, every fossil, every chemical trace is a page in the story of our planet. Yet for every page preserved, countless others have been burned, buried, or torn away by time. Erosion, subduction, fire, and flood. These are Earth's editors, rewriting history with no concern for what is lost. Think of the dinosaurs. They reigned for over 150 million years, an empire longer than humans have even existed as a species. They built no monuments, but their bones tell us they were the dominant life forms of their time. Yet even their legacy is fragmentary. Most of their bodies returned to the soil. Entire species vanished without a trace. We only know of them because a tiny fraction of their bones were buried in the right place, at the right time, under the right conditions. For every fossil uncovered, there are millions, perhaps billions, that were erased. If creatures as mighty as dinosaurs are mostly gone from the record, what chance would a civilization have? Imagine a human city. Skyscrapers of glass and steel, bridges of concrete, endless webs of roads. Now place that city in the perspective of deep time. Within decades of abandonment, plants crack the asphalt, vines climb the towers, and rust devours the steel. Within centuries, roofs collapse, forests return, rivers shift their paths and swallow streets. Within millennia, nothing remains but faint outlines beneath soil. And within tens of millions of years, tectonic forces recycle the land entirely, dragging the ruins into Earth's mantle, grinding them down into molten anonymity. All of it gone. This is Earth's way. Everything rises, everything falls, and everything is erased. But erasure is not the end of the story, because just as Earth forgets, it also renews. Forests regrow after fires. Oceans refill with life after mass extinctions. Continents tear apart and are born again. And across this endless cycle, intelligence itself may not be a one-time accident, but a recurring pattern. We often think of human intelligence as inevitable, the pinnacle of evolution. But step back and look at the larger picture. Evolution is a relentless experimenter, always testing, always improvising. For billions of years, it has tried different forms, different strategies. Trilobites with complex eyes, cephalopods with astonishing problem-solving abilities, dinosaurs with brains larger than we once believed, mammals with social complexity and memory. Intelligence is not unique. It is an echo, that keeps resurfacing in different shapes, under different skies. So what if civilization is also an echo? What if Earth itself is a stage where intelligence rises, alters the world, then vanishes, only to rise again in another form, another time? Imagine, millions of years ago, a species develops not tools of stone, but tools of bone or wood, materials that rot away, leaving no trace. Perhaps they tamed fire, perhaps they reshaped ecosystems. Then, a shift in climate erases them, their existence reduced to ashes and whispers. Later, another intelligence rises, maybe reptilian, maybe mammalian, and leaves its own faint mark before vanishing. Each one rising, each one erased, like waves breaking on the shore. Even now, traces of such possibilities may be hidden not in artifacts, but in chemistry. Consider the boundary layers in geology, thin seams of unusual isotopes, sudden shifts in carbon, spikes of metals or radioactive elements. We know some of these are linked to natural events, volcanoes, asteroid impacts, planetary upheavals. But could others represent the fading fingerprints of vanished civilizations? A civilization that burned fuel, altered the air, transformed the oceans, then disappeared so completely that only chemical scars remain. If so, we might never know, because Earth is ruthless in its renewal. Think of plate tectonics, the endless recycling of the crust. Entire continents swallowed, ocean floors melted, mountain ranges ground into dust. With each cycle, the surface of the Earth is refreshed, as though it were deliberately cleansing itself of history. To us, this is geology. But from the perspective of civilization, it is oblivion. And yet, in this erasure lies possibility. Because renewal means new beginnings. The extinction of the dinosaurs cleared the stage for mammals. The collapse of ecosystems creates opportunities for survivors to adapt, diversify, and innovate. Erasure, terrible as it is, always opens space for renewal. Could it be that intelligence itself follows this rhythm? That civilizations are meant to rise, transform, vanish, and then reappear in new forms? If so, humanity is not unique. We are just the latest iteration of a recurring phenomenon, consciousness blooming briefly against the backdrop of eternity. This perspective is both humbling and haunting. It means we are not the first, and likely not the last. Our legacy, too, will one day be erased, buried beneath oceans, recycled into stone, dissolved into the chemistry of the planet. The skyscrapers we admire, the satellites we launch, the digital archives we preserve, they are as fragile as sandcastles before the tide. But perhaps that fragility is not failure. Perhaps it is the natural order. Civilizations rise to change their world, and in doing so, they sow the seeds for what comes next. Their erasure makes room for renewal. Their disappearance opens the door for new life, new intelligence, new stories. This cycle stretches beyond Earth, across the galaxy, across billions of worlds and billions of years. Intelligence may emerge, thrive, vanish, and be born again elsewhere. Each civilization rising like a spark, illumined, hitting its corner of the cosmos, before fading back into darkness. From a cosmic perspective, civilization is not permanent. It is a rhythm. And so we arrive at a haunting thought. If civilizations are born to vanish, then permanence is an illusion. Perhaps the true measure of intelligence is not how long it lasts, but how deeply it transforms its world during its brief existence. For us, that transformation is already underway. We have altered the atmosphere, reshaped landscapes, and left chemical signatures that will endure long after we are gone. Someday, if another intelligence rises, it may look back and find traces of us, not our monuments, not our machines, but our scars in the rock. And they may wonder, who were these beings who came before? What stories did they tell? What world did they imagine into being? In that sense, our erasure does not mean silence. It means we will become part of the ongoing dialogue of Earth, a dialogue written not in books or buildings, but in stone, water, and air. Perhaps that is the true legacy of every civilization. Not permanence, but participation. Not monuments, but memory carried forward by the planet itself. And as we look deeper into Earth's past, perhaps we should ask, are we already part of a much older conversation? Are the strange chemical layers, the sudden shifts in climate, the unexplained scars in the record not just natural accidents, but the whispers of forgotten worlds, erased and renewed long before us? If so, then our story is not just ours. It is part of a cycle stretching back into darkness and forward into futures we cannot imagine. A cycle of erasure, a cycle of renewal. And in the next chapter, we will ask the most haunting question of all. If civilizations rise and vanish like sparks, could the silence of the earth and the silence of the stars be filled with countless voices we will never hear? The silence that isn't empty. There is a kind of silence that unsettles us. Not the silence of a quiet night, when the air is still but alive with faint sounds. Not the silence of a library, heavy with thought. This silence is different. It is the silence of deep time, a silence so vast and so heavy that it feels as though it presses against your skin. A silence that carries the weight of everything that has ever lived and everything that has ever been erased. We like to imagine silence as empty, but deep time's silence is anything but. It is not absence, it is presence, a presence so overwhelming that we often mistake it for nothingness, because it speaks in a language too slow for us to hear. Look down at the ground beneath your feet, a patch of dirt, a slab of stone, a grain of sand. To us it seems ordinary, mute, yet each one of those things is a fragment of memory. Every rock is a page in the Earth's archive, every layer of soil a line in a story that has been unfolding for billions of years. This is the silence that isn't empty. It is full of echoes. The limestone cliffs that stretch across the horizon, they are built from the skeletons of creatures so small they were invisible to the naked eye, billions upon billions of them, compacted over eons into towering monuments of the forgotten. The coal seams buried deep underground, they are the ghosts of forests that once covered the earth, trees that grew in alien climates and collapsed into swampy graves, pressed into fuel by the weight of ages. Even the air we breathe carries the silence of the past. Its oxygen was forged not by us, not by chance, but by countless generations of ancient life, tiny organisms that transformed the very chemistry of the planet long before humans walked the earth. Every breath we take is a communion with ghosts. And yet, for all these memories, we only glimpse fragments. The silence of deep time hides far more than it reveals. Most of the stories are gone, recycled by Earth's restless machinery, eroded, melted, subducted into fire. What remains is only enough to remind us that the silence is full, not empty. So we must ask ourselves, if everything that lives eventually joins this silence, what of us? We imagine our skyscrapers, our highways, our monuments as permanent, but they are nothing compared to mountains that crumble in the wind, seas that dry and refill, continents that drift like rafts across molten oceans of stone. Our cities will not survive this silence. Our machines will not endure. But something of us will. A trace, a whisper, a faint, stubborn scar folded into the rock, alongside everything that came before. And here lies the haunting possibility. If this silence holds us, then it may also hold others. What if we are not the only ones folded into Earth's memory? What if beneath the layers of stone and sediment, mingled with the dust of dinosaurs and the bones of trilobites, there are echoes of civilizations older than ours? Civilizations erased not just by time, but by the silence that renews and buries all things. If they existed, they would not leave us monuments. They would not leave us cities. But perhaps they left chemical shadows, subtle anomalies in the rocks, quiet distortions in the soil, markers that look to us like quirks of geology, but are, in fact, the fingerprints of forgotten worlds. Have we already walked past them without knowing? A strange mineral deposit noted in a scientific paper, a concentration of metals dismissed as natural coincidence, a pattern in the isotopes that doesn't quite fit, but is quietly filed away. How many of these anomalies are not errors of nature, but whispers of others, others whose silence now merges with our own? This is the silence that isn't empty. It is layered. It is alive. And within it may already be folded the stories of civilizations that came before, their voices muted but not entirely gone. We like to think of ourselves as the first, but when you stand in front of a mountain range, when you touch the rough surface of an ancient stone, you feel how naive that is. The earth is too old, its memory too vast, for us to assume we are its only story. Perhaps the silence holds many stories. Ours is only the most recent chapter, layered thinly on top of countless others. But there is something strange about this silence. It connects. When we look at the fossils of creatures long gone, when we trace the layers of extinction and renewal, we feel a sense of kinship. We see ourselves in them. Their silence becomes part of our own. And if others were here before us, they too are woven into this same tapestry. We are bound together, not by words, not by monuments, but by the earth itself. This silence, then, is not empty. It is a chorus of vanished lives, vanished worlds, vanished civilizations, all folded together into the same quiet hum of deep time. And if we listen closely enough, if we allow ourselves to hear it, that silence does not feel lonely. It feels full. It feels alive. It reminds us that even when we are gone, we will not vanish into emptiness. We will join the silence. We will become part of it, indistinguishable from the echoes that came before. But here lies the greatest mystery. Silence is not the end. It is transition. What is erased is also renewed. What disappears makes room for what comes next. And so, just as we have been folded into the silence of those who came before, one day others will be folded into the silence of us. When they walk the earth, when they breathe the air, when they study the rocks, they will unknowingly carry pieces of us. Our silence will mingle with theirs, just as theirs now mingles with ours. And so, in the silence that isn't empty, we are never alone. In the next chapter, we will step back even further, beyond Earth itself, to ask what this silence means on a universal scale. Because if Earth's silence is full of echoes, what of the silence of the cosmos? Could it, too, be heavy, not with absence, but with the weight of countless forgotten civilizations, our place in the infinite story? For all our triumphs, all our inventions, all the monuments and machines we build, we are, at the scale of deep time, barely a whisper. We are the newest layer, a thin film spread across the vast surface of Earth's memory, fragile and fleeting. Our cities, our histories, even our names, are written not in stone, but in dust, and dust is always waiting to be carried away by the wind. This truth is humbling, for we often imagine ourselves as the pinnacle, the culmination of history, the final note in a grand symphony. Yet, in reality, we are just one more measure in a song without end, a song that began long before us and will continue long after. Think of it. Someday, eons from now, our present moment will be ancient. We will not be remembered as modern, as advanced, as cutting edge. We will be the past. We will be the ones future eyes look back upon with curiosity, wondering how we lived, how we dreamed, how we fell. We, who now call the ancients primitive, will ourselves become the ancients. It is almost impossible for us to imagine. The thought stretches our perspective until it begins to ache. But it is the reality of deep time. The Earth has seen countless ages, countless rises and falls. We are not the exception. We are the continuation. One day, someone, or something, may walk across this planet and wonder about us. They may hold in their hands a shard of plastic, a trace of metal, a chemical signature buried in rock, and they may ask, who were these beings who lived so briefly and yet left such marks? They may puzzle over our choices, marvel at our scale, or shake their heads at our folly. We will be their mystery, just as those who came before are our mystery now. And here is the deeper truth. The Earth remembers. It remembers in its layers of stone, in its scars and sediments, in its oceans and skies. Nothing is truly lost. It is only transformed. The forests that fell became coal. The bones of sea creatures became mountains. The fire of ancient suns burns on in every atom of our bodies. We, too, will be remembered, not in monuments or in books, but in the language of the Earth itself. Our story will be pressed into layers of rock, scattered in isotopes, etched into the chemistry of oceans. Even when no one speaks our names, the Earth will carry our memory forward. And in this lies something strangely comforting. For though we will vanish, though our cities will crumble and our voices fall silent, our existence will not be erased. It will be folded into the infinite story, part of the chorus of echoes that fill the silence of time. But the greatest humility, and perhaps the greatest wonder, comes from realizing that we are not the end of the story. We are a chapter, a paragraph, a sentence, and others may yet come after us. Perhaps they will be human, shaped by evolution into something we could scarcely recognize. Perhaps they will be entirely new, born of Earth after we are gone, inheritors of the silence we leave behind. Or perhaps they will not be of Earth at all, travelers from distant stars, arriving to find the faint traces of us folded into stone. Whoever they are, They will see us not as the present, but as the past. They will call us the ancients, and when they do, they will not be wrong. This realization changes everything. It shifts us from the center of the story to a thread woven into a far greater tapestry. It reminds us that our legacy is not dominance, but participation. We are part of a chain stretching back into unfathomable depths of time and forward into futures we will never see. Every beginning lives on in this chain. The trilobite, long extinct, still echoes in the fossil record. The great forests of the Carboniferous still live on in the coal seams we burn. The dinosaurs, though gone, whisper through the birds that fill our skies. And so it will be with us. We too will echo. Our place in the infinite story is not to be eternal rulers, but eternal participants. And in that truth lies both humility and meaning. So the question is not whether we will vanish. We will. The question is, what echo will we leave? What memory will we gift to the earth? What trace will we carve into the silence? Will it be destruction, a scar of waste and ruin? Or will it be something subtler, something that speaks not just of our power, but of our wonder, our curiosity, our connection to the cosmos? We cannot choose whether we are remembered, but we can choose how. And so, as we stand here, just the newest thin layer in the vast archive of Earth, we are faced with the ultimate perspective. We are not the end. We are not the beginning. We are one voice in an endless chorus, and that chorus will go on. We will become the ancients. We will join the silence, and through the earth, through its memory, through its infinite story, we will live on, not as rulers, not as exceptions, but as part of everything. Because in the infinite story of time, nothing is ever truly lost. Everything is transformed. Everything continues. And that is our place.